military bases as was during Clark Air Base time, and up to this very present, are virtually territories of the United States, and that the law of the host country doesn't apply inside the military bases. So we're speaking of U.S. territories existing, and I think at this present time, there are more than 780 U.S. military bases in more than 145 countries in the world. And in the Philippines, we have one again. Because even if we manage to remove the base, there are ways by which we not only manage to remove the base, we manage to create a constitution that renders illegal the presence of military bases in the Philippines, but somehow the U.S. finds a way to circumvent the constitution. That now we have again military base in the Philippines, in the southern part that is being used in the so-called war against global war on terror as manifesting in the Philippines through the so-called presence of a group of Filipino Muslims who are supposedly linked to Al-Qaeda. So we have a U.S. military base again in the Philippines. Unfortunately, it's like that British game, snakes and ladder, that if you throw the dice wrong, you can go back to square one, and that's what happened in my country. At any rate, I was an active, not only in terms of the Vietnam War, but the opposition of the military bases, and in fact, I represented an organization that was the first to demand for the removal of the U.S. military bases, and to raise such demand, to raise such a slogan was considered subversive. You were suspected to be a member of the Communist Party. That when martial law was declared in the Philippines in 1972, because I was the national spokesperson of the largest youth organization, at that time, I became a wanted personality, and that was why I was hunted. Actually, I was arrested twice. The first time I was arrested, I escaped, made good with my escape for 7 years. The second time I was arrested in 1980. And that was when I was tortured because I had a record of escaping the previous arrest. The first thing they did was to prevent me from escaping. So they damaged my knee. And at this moment, I'm suffering, this knee pain, which probably, in philosophical way, is also a reminder for me, because I lived a relatively comfortable situation than what my compatriots in the Philippines are enduring at this point. That I shouldn't really be very comfortable. I have to speak about the issue of militarism. I have to speak about the issue of military bases. I have to speak about the fact that the largest concentration of capital in the world here in the United States goes to the military and to defense needs. And that has a huge impact, not only in terms of sustaining America's war in so many fronts, but it is also one of the biggest reasons why we are at present undergoing an economic crisis. Hold on one second. Yeah. All right. So our discussion is about the military-industrial complex, and the simplest way probably to have some definition about the military-industrial complex is to leave some definition, and I choose 3 definitions from the internet, and this is one: the U.S. military establishment in those industries producing military material viewed as together exerting a powerful influence on foreign and economic policy. In terms of the origin of the word, it came from President Eisenhower's farewell speech in 1961 when he introduced the concept of military-industrial complex. Other definitions are here. Again, it goes back to that time when President Eisenhower warned against some evil coming out from the military-industrial complex. I have to explain that President Eisenhower, in his speech, had an ambivalent attitude in terms of the military-industrial complex. He was speaking of it as a necessity because he found it impractical that in the past, America was producing agricultural implements and other things, and then in time of war, you have to produce weapons. Somehow he said there is to be a need that we have to have like a permanent way of manufacturing weapons. But then he foresaw the fact that this military-industrial complex was coming out. he was therefore voicing some, fears in terms of what would be the evil potential of the military bases. But he came from the perspective of an ambivalent position regarding the military bases. This is where exactly the term military bases, military industrial complex came from that speech of President Eisenhower in January 17, 1961, his farewell address to the nation. I'll just read it quickly. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential of disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper matching of huge industrial and military machineries of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. So this is where the origin of the term military-industrial complex came from. However, in that speech of President Eisenhower, there is something very significant that eludes a lot of people. I mean, when they're looking at this speech, they just look at the mention about the military-industrial complex. But actually, there was this particular line which I want to bring to your attention, and he said, we annually spend on military security more than the net income of all United States corporations. He was saying that the largest concentration of capital in the U.S. was going on military security. And this is significant, and this is something that we have to reflect in terms of our present economic crisis. Because if we are looking at where capital is, where money should come from that could be used for the benefit of society, unfortunately, that money is being used for military and defense purposes. And so, according to the person who developed actually the notion, not only, who expanded the notion of military-industrial complex, even to the extent of describing what he considered as the permanent war economy, lifted from that very analysis or from that very line of President Eisenhower. I'm speaking of Seymour Melman, the person who came out with the concept of the peace dividend. And actually, in one of his work in 1990, this was after the collapse of the Soviet Union, when everybody was expecting that somehow we will get money out of military use because there is no longer any need for funding the military. That is when Seymour Melman realized that this was not happening because there is a permanent war economy, that money continues to be tied up in the military, and they, as I said, absorb the largest concentration of capital to a point that whatever non-military use for money was preempted by the fact that money was concentrated in the hands of the defense and the military. Now, the concept of the permanent war economy is attributed to Charles A. Wilson, who was the first defense secretary under Eisenhower. And actually, he was the corporate executive officer of General Electric. He became famous because during the time of his confirmation, somebody challenged whether if there is a conflict of interest between being Secretary of Defense and being the CEO, former CEO of GE or GM, how will he resolve the apparent contradiction of interest? And this is how he answered he said that he answered in the affirmative that yes, because he said that what is good for General Motors is good for the country, and what is good for the country is good for General Motors. The difference did not exist. Our company is too big. I just want to call your attention on this. Company is too big. Because this current state is repeating again under the present situation with AIG and everybody else, too big to fail.